Hello, my name is Eric Ndello, the creative director of MacFly Fresh, located right here at Camp North End, 301 Camp Road, Suite 106. After being selected as one of the artists in the Men of Change exhibit, we use screen printing, the art of screen printing, as a tool for social change. By one, we feel like screen printing is a way for us to put our messages and the things that we believe in on t-shirts. And the t-shirts become walking billboards. When people see these t-shirts, people get a chance to communicate with others, see positive messages, and also let these positive messages hopefully spark a conversation. That conversation could then lead to more in-depth learning opportunities between individuals. So we use t-shirts as a tool of social justice by putting images on there, and we also use the art of screen printing to help educate individuals, to help build their brands, things of that nature, to hopefully give them an economic tool to help with the upper mobility situation that's going on here in Charlotte too as well. So screen printing as a tool for justice, screen printing as a tool to bring power to the people is one of the things that we do here at MacFly Fresh. We are MacFly Fresh, the #1 interactive screen print location in North Carolina and the world. Please come by and check us out.
Welcome to What's It Gonna Take? Art and Social Change. My name is Carrie Peterson, Senior Director of History and Exhibits at Levine Museum of the New South. I'm joined by these 3 artists who are featured in Charlotte's Men of Change exhibition at the Levine Museum and at the Harvey B. Gantt Center in Charlotte. So what I would like to do is have each of you introduce yourself and talk about your style and form of art.
Hello, my name is Keudis Sanchz. I'm from Venezuela, South America, and consider myself Afro-Indigenous Latino. My work, I give it the name is I call líneas or lines, because it's a word for the scratches. I tried to work the first time with a pre-making art, but it's too much information to create that work. And I research for different material and find this work with markers, acrylic markers with a heavy paper or other kind of materials. And that's my work right now.
All right, I'm Percy King, originally from Columbus, Ohio. Been in Charlotte now for three years. My style, 3D wood portraiture is the most accurate description of it. I call it the Shaolin wood technique. Kind of stems from my love for music, and that kind of started whenever I was working. Traditionally, I'm a carpenter, is what I would do. I was fixing up my house and doing little woodwork around my house. And when I started doing the 3D wood portraiture, I was showing it around to people, and the way I was doing it, and I would ask people, like, what do you call this? You know, some people saying you call it stencils, you call it, you know, layered stencils, but nobody's really done it in 3-dimensional, or, you know, not too many people are doing it the way you're doing it. And so I said, well, what do I call it? And they said, well, because nobody's doing it, you can call it whatever you want. So it was only natural then that I called it the Shaolin wood technique, because, you know, I was always listening to Wu-Tang whenever I was, you know, doing work in my garage or my shop, anything like that. And so I would always say, you know, I'm slicing wood like a samurai, you know, different things like that, you know, just to keep myself occupied and tell funny stories at the same time. But it really solidified when I got my first piece into the Columbus Museum of Art, and they asked me to send in a bio, and I explained to them, you know, what the Shaolin wood technique was, and they said, we're going with it. That is what it is. So it's been that ever since.
How you guys doing? I'm Garrison Gist. I'm from here, Rock Hill and Charlotte. My dad lived here. My mom lived in Rock Hill, so I've been here pretty much my whole life. My style, I grew up in the height of the Disney animation times, so a lot of Disney influence. Grew up reading comic books, a lot of comic book influence, just animation heavy. And then I also went to school for graphic design, so you could see those influences in my work a lot with layering the color palettes, how I like to stack colors on top of each other and stuff like that. So with that, I usually just try to take it could be anything pop culture related, whether it's TV, music, any form of entertainment, and interpret it through my eyes via all these different art styles I've accumulated over my life that I love to pull from, that I love referencing. And that's the best way to describe what my style is. I don't have a cool name for it, but it's some subset of pop art, to say the least.
Thank you for all those awesome introductions. So since this is What's It Gonna Take, Art and Social Change, I would really like to hear from each of you about how either you use your art for social change, or alternatively, how do you perceive art as a powerful tool for inspiring change?
Well, I think that art is a universal language. You don't need more words. You need just the message, the clear message. When you paint, when you work like wood or the other medium that you express your work, if you had a clear message, people understand what you want to do or what you want to present or the idea that you have. And one important thing that I learned from one artist, he told me, if someone have your art, have part of yourself, have part of your time, have part of yours, because it's your creativity, it's your time, it's your research, it's everything that represented in your work. It's too much. It's a lot of things for the other people that you spread. And I think that we have a powerful tool to influence another people and the community or whatever you put in your work. And we have a nice platform right now, an opportunity compared with the artists years ago, because we have a social media right now, and that is a lot.
Yeah, I think for me, art is super important when it comes to social change and the social responsibility that we have to express our opinion. The beautiful part about art is it is a tool to convey a message. The art itself at times doesn't even matter. You know, I explain to kids all the time when I'm talking about art, and I say, do you consider yourself an artist? And they say no. And I say, can you draw a straight line? And they say yes. And I said, if you can draw a straight line and stand next to it with a straight face and tell a great story, that's art. You'll convey the message. So a lot of times when it comes to my work, I'm not necessarily making a statement in every single piece that I do. Sometimes I'm having fun. Sometimes I'm doing portraiture of famous people, you know, people that have impacted my life. But it allows me to get into certain spaces where I would normally not be in. You know, for instance, I have a piece in the museum, Redman, you know, a rapper, a 90s rapper. And I'm able to have conversations with people in a museum about Redman, about the Def Squad, about different things around that time, around 90s hip hop, with conversations that I would not normally be having with any other people. And that's why it's important for me to express my opinions, my excitement about my life and the things that have influenced my life, because they're not common knowledge to everybody. These individuals are not common knowledge to everybody. So, you know, a person like J. Charles Jones, you know, I just learned of J. Charles Jones when I was speaking with Carrie, and she was explaining to me that, you know, his story is not, you know, not nationally well known, has not been celebrated and pushed to the forefront as maybe it should have been, as maybe others have been, who are equally as you know, respected. So it's definitely great to, you know, get my point out there and talk about these things, and art is the perfect way for me to do that.
Oh man, these guys, they covered a lot of the bases. The biggest takeaway is that having the power to make art, take nothing and literally turn it into something, whether it be wood and turning it into a final piece like Percy does, or sculpture. You take a piece of clay or whatever the material may be and you turn it into a beautiful statue. You have that power to create something. And with that comes a responsibility, whether you want to claim it or not. I can speak from, I guess, my standpoint. I got to see art in so many cool ways, like in terms of how it's changed over the years. I went from a floppy disk to a flash drive. So I've seen like the changes in music, art, and how we receive all these things. And the biggest thing for my age group, I would say, is just the tool of social media. You literally have the power to, at your fingertips. We have computers in our hands. And if something's going on right now and you feel a way about it, you have the ability to create something. and put it out there at the click of a button. And that can be really good, that can be really bad. It really just depends on how you choose to use it. So having that access and that ability is something I feel like it's a very nice tool to take advantage of, because whether you use your art to convey a message directly, subliminally, again, you have that power. And with that power, guys, it's so cheesy, but I'm a comic book guy. With great power comes great responsibility. So just using your work to touch as many people as possible, that's the biggest social change you can make with your art, because regardless of good or bad, people view your art and they're going to feel something. So it's up to you to kind of push them in the direction of how to feel. So, and if they like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't, you know. That's art. It's subjective, so.
Thank you. So I'm going to go off script just a little bit and ask you each if there's a piece of art or an artist out there whose work has motivated you in the social justice arena.
When I was invited to this proposal, I said, I have a privilege. I told to my wife, I have a privilege, right? It's a great opportunity because I talking with people here, Afro-Americans, about the history. It's something if you read and you learn a lot about the history here, one strong. And when I talk to Mr. Cron, I have the privilege that he is on live. I tell him, sir, I need to talk to you about your work. When I check their videos, when I check all the story that he made, and every step that he gave to help the community, I say, wow, it's strong to when the people tell you directly when they live and they make a lot of things with the community. You say, I think it's too much. It's a lot of information, but it's not easy to assimilate.
I think for me, the artist Kehinde Wiley is probably one of my biggest influences. Not that necessarily that he's known as a social activist as far as his work goes. I think that seeing people, him portraying people, individuals in different lights, in ways that they aren't normally seen or normally perceived, is really what influences me. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that, you know, I had a chance, my wife and I, we had a chance to visit the Louvre Museum in France. And this was even before I was into art, but it did shape the way I thought about art. Is I was seeing all these pictures of, you know, all these different paintings and masterpieces. You know, I was looking at the Mona Lisa, and I'm looking at different kings and queens throughout the years. And then we went to the Van Gogh Museum, you know, and I see the Vincent Van Gogh famous, you know, self-portrait, and, you know, it was a shocker because it was only like this big, you know. You know, I'm thinking it's this massive piece my entire life because you only see it in books. But when you see it in books, you see it celebrated, and you see these things celebrated. It's different when you see it in person, and you realize that these are real people. You know, I talk about it all the time. You know, when it comes to, you know, I used to play football. When it comes to the NFL, you know, I idolize the NFL. You know, as far as, you know, I just thought you had to have amazing talent, and you do. You know, have to have amazing talent. But once I got to that level, it was just a game. It dawned on me that this is the same game I've been playing, but I've been hyping it up all these years. And it was the same way for me with the art. When I finally saw these masterpieces in person, it dawned on me that I didn't see anything representing Black people or anything that looked like me. And I'm saying to myself, like, our stories are just as impactful as these people's stories. You know, our stories should be celebrated in the same way. Now, there were a lot of people doing it, but at the same time, I wasn't into art at the time, so it was all new to me. So I had not seen anything, and then I come back to Columbus, and the first piece I saw that resonated with me was a Kehinde Wiley piece. And it kind of fulfilled everything that I was thinking at that point. He'd actually done his first museum residency in Columbus, Ohio, and he had 6 pieces, and one was of a guy in Timberlands and, you know, baggy jeans with the basketball logos all over them. And that piece it was a mind-blowing moment, because I was like, that is exactly what I'm talking about. That is exactly the thoughts that I'm having, and he has expressed it. And so I set about after that, when I started art, this is exactly how I wanted my art to look, and I've kind of continued down that path.
If I had to reference an artist that I kind of look up to in terms of social change, there's two. The first would be Keith Haring, just because I love that pop art style and what he was doing back in the day with his posters and just the expressiveness of like his little characters. Like he wasn't always outright saying, hey, this is the message that I want you to take from this, but you could look at the characters and what they were doing and little icons, whether it be a heart or whatever the case may be, incorporated into the designs to tell that story and let the viewer kind of take away from it what they would. The other influence I would definitely say is Banksy. Growing up, I was so heavy into graffiti and I used to love sketching it, but access was a thing, so I wasn't able to go out and spray paint and do cool stuff like that. But then you go and you find guys like Banksy who pop into these cities and nobody knows what he looks like, the mystique of it all, but he's using this ability to make art to go in and do these cool stencils and different images, but they all have a message. And I think the biggest thing for me growing up with art, like I could always draw, but there was a cool factor that I felt like it was missing for me to draw me in. You know, you learn all the history and stuff like that, but we're so many years removed from that. It's only going to get tougher because, you know, with technology now, like, oh, nobody cares about dibbity from 200 years ago. Although you need to know those references, I feel like to have artists that do cool things that are able to catch the eye of the younger crowd now, and kind of bring them into that, like, oh, art can be cool, art can have a message, and that's so valuable. I tell kids all the time, it's like expansion leads to exposure.
Thank you for sharing those. So what motivated you to be a part of this project, Charlotte's Men of Change?
Well,
We'll switch up the order a little bit. I think for me, you know, being from a different city, you know, I'm a huge history guy. I love history. You know, I listen to history podcasts. I read history books. I love African history. So, and then playing in sports, you know, I'm always concerned about my legacy and what my legacy looks like, because although that chapter of my life is over, it's one thing that I can look back and it's still referenced, you know, to this day, you know, and it's stamped, you know, I'm in the books, you know, championship teams, things like that. So I'm always concerned. I always want to learn the history of a city. But for me, what motivated me the most was the chance to be able to participate in something historic in the city of Charlotte. You know, I want to get involved. I want to do different things. But being from another city, not knowing the background of everything that's going on here, it's not up to me. I don't feel it's my responsibility to try to inject myself into the culture here. I want to sit back and observe and be invited in. This was the opportunity for me to do that.
Oh, well, for me, it's like I say before, is to have an opportunity. It's a great opportunity to present your work to a lot of people and collaborate with the two important museums here in the city. It's a great screen where people check my work. And the other one is, like he says, we need to have responsibility, sense, or what's the word, my last? The belonging, sense of belonging, to be part of the community, to be part of the story, because I have my story in my country. We have a story for African descendants. But when you check here, I'm here in Charlotte right now. I need to be part of the city. I need to identify myself with the city. To be part of the community, I need to know the story, the community in every area, for Latinos, for Africans, for every person in that city. Because if you want to be part of the one place, I think my wife and me thinking that we need to be part of this one. We need to know the story. We need to know the sites. We need to walk around, not the people. And I know that Harvey Gann and Levine are the great platform for the city. It's Levine and Harvey talking about the story. It's a story nice to tell. And I said, I call my word storyteller just from one word of Mr. Chrome. But as an artist, we are storytellers. They are for painting, figures, 3D designs. It's in different media. I said I need to present my message that I think the story, I need to take to me that part of the history, to be part of that history in that city too.
So for me, kind of like the guys touched on, the opportunity itself was a big motivating factor. Being able to work with the Levine alongside with the Gantt, that's a huge opportunity. Just here in the city, being from here, so that was a no-brainer. The other part for me was kind of a full circle moment, and me and Carrie talked about it once she introduced me to who I would be painting, and the whole thing behind the person I had, there was no pictures of him. We didn't know what he looked like. I was going to be creating from scratch, and actually 2 years ago with the Gantt, a friend of mine, Kaylin Renee, had to paint the same guy, and I remember sitting down with her and her just being stressed out, like, Garrison, I don't know what to do. We don't have any pictures. I don't know what to paint. So like to have that full circle moment where now I'm having to do the same thing 2 years later, we still don't have any pictures, and portray this guy in my style. That was a huge motivating factor for me. I wanted to take on that challenge and just to create a freedom that I had with being able to depict this figure. However I wanted via my style was just kind of a cool motivating factor in itself, because how often do you just get to, it's like, take off the reins and just really go? Because again, we didn't know what he looked like. So did a lot of research and just pulled a lot of references together, and then it was kind of cool to have his family come out the day of the opening and tell me that I did a good job, and they were able to find some pictures of his siblings and stuff and show me different pictures, like, you were pretty close to what he would have looked like if he was here. So that whole full circle moment was definitely brought the whole project together for me.
So how did this experience depicting a man of change, how did it impact you personally? Well, Garrison, you touched on it some, but if you want to add to it, if anyone else wants to
switch
add
up the order again, I guess I'll start this one off. So how did it, I'd say the impact it had on me was each one of us had a different subset of the Men of Change exhibit. So mine was Myth Breakers. And as I was reading about John Shank and all of the things he did as an African-American male in those times for this city is insane. And just him as an African-American male, whether he was born to his slave owner or not, like, so he, after talking with his family, they said he would have been very white passing or at least lighter skin. Still to be able to do all that he did with people knowing that he was still a slave in those times is insane. And just looking at that, it made me kind of look within myself in ways that I would say I'm a myth breaker. And Percy can probably relate, that people see this bigger athlete, you play football, rough, running into people, and then they find out that you paint or you do art, and they're like, whoa, I didn't know that football players were capable of this. And it's just like, well, people come in different boxes, shapes, and sizes. You never know until you actually get to know people. So just ways like that, doors that I never thought I would be able to get in, because people just see, oh, athlete, oh, jock. They don't want to take the time to see what you actually are into and things of that sort. Just all the doors that I've been able to walk through, hurdles that I've gotten over with that badge of being an athlete and us being in a box and then doing this beautiful thing like making art. It kind of resonated that, like, if you're persistent enough and you love what you do and you're passionate about what you do, you're always going to break through and find a way to make it work.
And to even touch on what he just said, there's so much crossover with being an athlete and an artist, and that's one of the biggest obstacles or biggest hurdles that I've had to get over as far as being accepted in the art community. When we do art, we're passionate about what we do, just in that same passion, that same drive is the same passion and drive that we use with athletics. You know, I was actually talking to a kid at the Levine Museum. I said, you know, you play basketball, you know, because he said something like, oh, I don't think I could be an artist because I can't draw, you know. And I said, you know, yeah, it takes time and it takes practice. I said, but you're a basketball player. If you shot 200 free throws a day, would that bother you? He said, no. I said, because you're passionate about what you do and you like it. So if you say to someone just off the street, yeah, I shoot 200 free throws a day. Yeah, that sounds like a lot. But if you love what you do, that's nothing. And that same passion, that same discipline transfers over into art. But getting back to the topic, as far as what it did for me and what learning about J. Charles Jones did for me as an artist, it humbled me. I think when I came into the project, I had a lot of grandiose ideas about what I wanted to do and how I wanted the piece to look. But I also have the perspective is that I let the piece speak to me. So when it came to what I did with it, I kind of figured, you know, my style is enough, you know, so I figured I didn't want to do too much with it. His story, you know, it's well documented. It just needs to be pushed to the forefront. So I really wanted to, you know, do a background and in a way that I had never done before, which is with the collage work, and just to do it in a way that his story tells itself. If people look at the piece, they're going to learn about him. They're going to learn about his story. They're going to learn about how serious he was. And I've watched a lot of interviews of him, the available interviews, and he was a character. He was a jolly, funny guy. But if you look at the pictures that I put on there, he's a serious dude. And to do what he did and participate in the movements that he participated in, you had to be a serious dude. You had to put on, you know, a different mask. And I wanted people to see that as well. So like I said, it humbled me. It toned me down as far as I can't do everything to every piece that I work with. Some pieces should tell their own story and some individuals should tell their own story. So that's what I did with mine.
Well, I think that check all that works. Every character was interesting because we try to go inside ourselves to meditate about the life of other people to make change. And we have the power to impact our generation and the future generation, because when we die, our world is continue on some place, on some house, or in some hands. And the people maybe in the future talk about our work. Is that impact my life to know more and understand that I said before is that the knowledge is power, and that power improve myself.
So has being a part of this project and going through the process of making your pieces, has it inspired you to think about history in a different way or in a new way?
I guess so for me, definitely, because tackling this project with a figure that, like, again, we didn't have any pictures of, we had just a bunch of information. How many other historical figures are there that have these great stories that there aren't any images for us to reference? And I thought about that a lot. I was like, I'm over here going crazy trying to paint this one dude. This is one person. Imagine how many people, especially African-American males from that time period, who have these great stories and have accomplished these great things. And, you know, we know about them because stories get passed down or whatever. We may have a few news clippings here and there, but photography, artwork, just pictures, they're important parts of history. Like, what's the saying? A picture holds 1,000 words or whatever the quote is. Like, even if it's something as simple as an artist going and doing the research and trying to pull together whatever info they can to depict what they think this person looks like, there's going to be somebody that comes along 50 years from now. Hopefully we have some pictures of them by then, but if they don't, they'll be able to look at my painting and say, hey, well, this is what we may think he would have looked like, or they'll see my painting and see where I met with his family and his family said, yeah, well, based off what we have and what we know about him, he would look like this. So it provides an image to go with the story, and just puts a face to a great story. And yeah, that's definitely been on my mind the most since the project. So I've been spinning. There's a lot of history going on right now.
You know, for me, again, it was also, it was an awesome experience for me, and it is still an awesome experience for me to be able to participate in Charlotte's history. Like I said before, I don't want to impose. I know what it's like to have outsiders come into your city, into your community, and tell you who your heroes should be. I think it's very important that the city of Charlotte should choose who its heroes are. And there's so many people whose stories, you know, like he said, are not told or not as well exposed as others should be. And this was a great opportunity for me to do that. I love the opportunity, and I thank the Levine Museum and the Harvey B. Gantt Center for it.
I'm not American, but now I feel much better. I will have more clear idea the fight for the civil rights here, for the people feelings. We are humans. Just the difference between Americans and Venezuelan people is just border. It's just a language. And we can learn the language, but the story, when you learn in my language, is strong. And when I learn about, the thing that I know about American history, about African history, was movies, documentaries, and material like this. It's interesting. When I talk to my wife and we check a movie and watch a movie or documentary, I'm going faster to check on the internet more information about the people, about the history of that people. I say, wow, this is strong, because it's a movie or documentary just talking about just part of the life, one specific moment, or it's a short story compared with the real story. And we found more and more. When I look in more and more, I say, wow, it's a lot. She had the last year the opportunity to go into the civil rights tour. And when she returned, she bring a lot of material. I say, oh, it's too much information, a lot. I start to read. I start to check. And she went to one place that they put it jars with soil where the people was lynching. And they told the stories. I told you, my skin isn't like the spoon. It's weird, and I felt that my skin is spread. I feel something new. It's different when you listen to people to know more that story. Or in case that Gary have an opportunity to talk with a great grandson of the man that he painted. I said, whoa. And he's talking to the guy's talking to him, but I pay attention. He said, okay, all right. Just it's too much. And the sir having a bag with a lot of papers, information, and a lot of materials. I said, wow. He is very proud to be part of this family, to have this ¿cómo dice? Legacy. Yes, that legacy. I said, in my country, we know our story, our traditions, but it's a little bit cubierta, ¿cómo eres? It's a cover, because in our country they say we are similar, we are the same, we don't have difference. But when they check the story, yes, we have difference. They are white and we are black, so we are descendant of indigenous, and sometimes they said, you pass here. People told me, you pass. But I don't want to pass. I want to be myself. I want to spread my story too. But the story in America is too strong. When I read that, I know more that sometimes I feel like I want to cry because it's too much.
Well, I want to open it up to the audience if any of you have any questions for our panelists.
So I know that as part of your research process, you, of course, researched your individual men, but I know that you also spent some time with Men of Change, the national exhibit, and I was wondering, how that inspired your work, and also if you had favorite parts of Men of Change that you know, men or artists or artworks that you looked at and thought like, Shazam, this is a real inspiration for me.
I can speak to that. I know there's a painting, and the artist's name escapes me right now, but he painted Ryan Coogler for his Man of Change, and that piece inspired me from a scale standpoint because Carrie saw me. I stood there for like 5 minutes staring at this. It was so massive, and I think that pushed me in a direction to just go big, and just really explore what I could do with the materials and how I used them to depict this person. So that one was definitely an inspirational factor for me.
Derek Adams's piece of Kendrick Lamar probably spoke to me the most. You know, I've seen his work in several places. I've seen it at Art Basel. I've seen it in Los Angeles, in Columbus as well. But just to be able to, you know, get that close to it, you know, and have that personal time with it, where it wasn't just a massive, you know, influx of people, where I could just kind of really just look at the work and see how he does things. I think that was inspiring to me. And the fact that, you know, he does a lot of, I don't know what you would call it necessarily, stencil work, but he does cutouts, something similar to what I do. And you can kind of see a similar DNA in there. So, you know, that was inspiring to me.
For me, when I visit the exhibition the first time, I check every piece and I spend a lot of time checking details. But honestly, I love the Romero Bearden painting. I love the details, and the start that the guy to paint this, I said, it's saying like Garrison, sorry, I need to paint something huge. But that piece, when I check the piece and inspire me, I say every piece was important to me because that introduced me to a different point of view, the different artists. And I checked every piece and detail every piece. I find the story. I try to know what's happened behind the person that was represented in every piece.
Well, I have a question. First of all, thank you for giving yourselves in those pieces of art. And do you gentlemen consider men of changes? I expect 3 different answers.
Like, do we consider ourselves men of change? That's not for me to decide. That is up to you. So if you consider me one, I will gladly accept. If not, I will continue to work and try to become one. But yeah, that's not for me to say. That's for the viewers and the people who take in my work and study the things that I do and how I try to give back through my work and stuff like that. That's for them to determine.
You are a coach too, right?
I do coach track, so I guess I am changing some young man or a woman's life. So in that aspect, yes. With the art, it's up to y'all.
Yeah, I think it kind of relates to what we talked about earlier about social responsibility. When I first got into art, I didn't think people wanted to hear anything that I had to say. But you don't get to choose whether you're a man of change. You know, like he said, people will choose it for you. You know, even with being athletes, you know, Charles Barkley said it best, I'm not a role model. But the response is always, you are a role model because you have the platform. So for us, it's important that we think about the things that we say. And for me, it's important that I think about the things that I say and the pieces that I do and the way I present myself, because someone possibly could consider me a man of change. It's great to think of myself like that, but you know we never, no one ever thinks of themselves as a hero or the heel. You know, it's up to the audience to decide that.
I think to tell a story is important, and we tell stories with our work, and this is a message to the people receive. I think that even as one person, your message is go there. You did the job. I think that if we impact just one person, you are a man of change. I think that I'm a man of change. I work for my community. When I receive the feedback with the people, I say, okay, I'm going Voy por buen camino. I'm going into the right track.
I do have a question. I know the genesis for the exhibit, the national exhibit that the Smithsonian put together. I know it was sort of like their own reckoning after Trayvon Martin was murdered, and that was kind of like what ignited. I'm just wondering, like, how it's such a beautiful celebration, but if we think about it, it came out from a tragedy. So I'm just thinking, like, how do you perceive the stories and the portrayal of a Black man in your artwork? Like, do you see yourself when you produce that artwork, or do you try to separate yourself and concentrate on the subject? I'm just wondering about like that relationship that you have with that story.
It's definitely a progression. Like you said, it started in one place and it's something different now, with more so a celebration and us telling these stories. But I think that's beautiful in itself, because not only is it, like I touched on before, you don't always hear these stories, or like Percy said, they're not as known. Not only does it allow us to tell these stories while learning about the stories that the people who were a part of the exhibit before us and the people they had, it's just a never-ending opportunity for people to learn more. So now that we're a part of it, somebody's going to not only know about the people we painted, but then they're going to look into us. Well, who is Percy King? Who's Garrison Gist? Who is Eric Candela? All of us. And it just, like I said, it continues that snowball effect of learning more about these stories and getting them out there more for more people to learn history.
I think for me, it just kind of follows in line with, the resiliency of the African diaspora, from North America to South America. We've birthed great things out of great tragedy, just if you want to just say soul food, for example, we've taken the scraps and we've turned it into something that's phenomenal. And we've taken tragedy and we've turned it into something that's phenomenal. This exhibit is phenomenal. And no matter where it started, it is a monument to the individual. At the same time, it's like celebrating their life. It's the seed that they thought would be killed, but that seed sprouted forth a flower. And that's how I view these things. And so it is just, again, it's an honor for me to be able to participate in it and do a person like J. Charles Jones and be able to learn his story, because, even we were talking about earlier about, do we perceive ourselves as men of change? I don't think any of the individuals that we portrayed perceived themselves as men of change or set out to be, necessarily men of change. They were doing what had to be done. And it wasn't until their deeds and their accomplishments compounded over time and just one after another that, their paths, were different, but they all ended up in this exhibit because their entire story was impactful. So that's where I see it going.
The story of the tragedies is strong, but like Percy says, it's not a flower, because they fight for their right. I don't know where I listen something like, if you live with change, I prefer die to broke my change. My change, la cadenas, chain. And I think that if they don't fight in their time, maybe they don't change the situation in a lot of life. But the life of that people marked generations. They are a footprint like this in every life. And when the people remember that, people said, he fought for me. He fought for my rights. He made something in their community.
I tried not to ask any questions, but listening to you three and the climate that we're in, let's see if I could word this, and you're researching these gentlemen. Now, it looks great, the work that you did, but I know that there's the dark parts. And so what kind of self-care are you all receiving to help you with that, if that makes any sense.
I think I'll speak to that just from my experience. And I can relate to the question because art for me is so emotional, and I put so much time and work into it that when I sell a piece, like he was saying earlier, when people bring a piece into their home, they're getting my time, they're getting my energy. For instance, I just had 7 pieces. I ain't gonna tell you how much they were insured for, but I made them in a time and space in which I was in a bad headspace. I wasn't happy with the work. I wasn't happy with my thought processes at the time. I wasn't happy with my emotional state at the time I made them. I tossed them, threw them in the trash. You know, I went to the Monroe dump, Monroe City dump, and trashed them because they were a constant reminder of where I was at that time. When I look at the piece that I did for the Men of Change exhibit, it was exciting. It was exhilarating. You know, I could relate to this person. He reminded me so much of the person who was most impactful in my life, which was my high school football coach who, you know, it sounds cliche, but he was like a father to me. I spoke to him for over 30 years. And he was jolly and joyful, he was an orator. He was a griot. He was anything you name it. He was an artist, a football coach, a Vietnam vet, you name it. He was those things. And his personality reminded me so much of Charles Jones that it was a joy to do this piece. It was a joy. So I was super excited, and it was a really healing process for me because he actually had just passed away recently. But I was able to, you know, throughout that time of making this piece, I was that entire time I'm with my coach. I'm with my father, you know. So that's kind of how I relate to your question.
I guess for me, it wasn't more so during the process. It was the end of the process. Meeting his family and getting their blessing and finding out how well I did in terms of depicting the one guy's it was his great-great-grandfather, and then I got to meet the great-great-great-granddaughter, and then the great-great-great-great. It was a lot. That was I told Carrie, I was like, it was like a weight off my chest, meeting the family, them telling me they enjoyed the piece. And they even went as far as saying that they felt like I was now a part of their family after completing something like this. So that was the biggest takeaway for me. That was my self-care. And to answer your question.
I didn't charge insurance for those pieces I threw away, just so y'all know. Just so I can go on record.
Just in case they come after you.
Yeah.
Well, I feel so exciting when they call me and invite me for that exhibition. But when I talked to Mr. Kron and he saw the piece, he told me, "You catch me. You have my essence in that piece." I feel great. In the process, I make some sketches and I choose 3 pictures. I say what I need to paint. I paint 3. I have 2 in digital and 1 in traditional way. But after this, I made my sketches. I thinking about what I want to do. In the process, I disappointed in the first time, and I spent time and work. I talked to my wife. I tell, I'm disappointed. I think that I need more, and I walk around far for the piece and check the piece one again, make some lines and go behind again and check. I don't know. I need more thing in that piece. Even when I went to the museum with a piece, I say I feel satisfaction. But when he told me, "You got me, sir," my beat heart start to make more faster. I say, "Oh man, I did it."
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being a part of Charlotte's Men of Change, for being here and talking with us and sharing with us today. There's so many takeaways that I couldn't possibly list them all. One that's really resonating is, in your own way, you all do this all the time, I think, representing those who aren't represented. And if it's someone that we can't go and look up a picture of, we get the essence, the legend of John Schenck from Garrison's painting. A lot of people did know J. Charles Jones here in Charlotte, and knew the big personality that he had. But not everyone was there to see him the way you depicted him. He was a brave, serious man, just like you said. And a lot of us grew up with Steve Crump on the TV. I know I did. And there's so much more to him. And the way you layered your three images, really shows there's so many sides to this person. And I think all of your artwork, you've taught us tonight how it speaks to the human condition and what we all have in common and our differences and all the different perspectives that make up things now and in history, and is so appreciated. And people are really enjoying your paintings in the exhibit, and getting to know you all and working with you on this project has really been a great joy of my life. So I thank you for that as well.
Thank you for having us.